We're here today to do something that has only taken place 23 times in the nation's history. We are complying with Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution, which mandates the actual enumeration of the population every 10 years. The founding fathers of our nation had a bold and ambitious plan to empower the people over their new government. The plan was to count every person living in the United States and to use that count to determine representation in Congress. Enshrining this mandate in our Constitution marked a turning point in world history. Today, in reporting these first 2010 census results, our great American democracy renews itself in the midst of a changing nation, peacefully, fairly, and openly.
This is really an important day for the American people. And earlier this morning, in accordance with the law and fulfillment of a constitutional mandate, I delivered the 2010 census findings to the President of the United States. This is a ritual that has occurred only 22 other times in American history. My report to the President included the national and state populations and the apportionment, or the allocation of seats, to the United States House of Representatives, based on the official population count of the 2010 census. I told the President also that the 2010 census was completed on time and under budget, almost $1.9 billion under budget, which represents more than 25% of the total that Congress allocated in 2010 for spending on the decennial census. Ultimately, 74% of U.S. households returned the census questionnaire by mail, matching what had been achieved in the 2000 census and exceeding the predictions of the experts and halting a 3-decade decline in mail-back response since 1970. And so we'd like to express our deep, most sincere thanks to all those who returned the questionnaire or even took a few minutes to answer the simple questions from the almost 750,000 census workers who followed up with the households that had not mailed back their response. All of you have helped us paint this latest portrait of America. Much is riding on the results that we're announcing today. The census data will determine how more than $400 billion is allocated every single year by the federal government and for the next 10 years to local communities for everything from education to senior services, to housing, to law enforcement and transportation. And the 2010 census will help shape the makeup of state legislatures and decide the allocation from the different states to the U.S. House of Representatives. So indeed, the 2010 census will serve as a backbone for our political and economic system for years to come.
I am proud, on behalf of all my colleagues at the Census Bureau, to report to the American public the 2010 census national and state population counts and the apportionment results for the U.S. House of Representatives. As you've heard, this is the 23rd time this country has done this. At that time, we were just a nation of 3.9 million people in 1790. This is the time when all of us come together to count ourselves and make possible a critical step in the democracy. At this point, I am happy and proud to note we have finished the work required to produce our first 2010 census product. As of April 1, 2010, according to the 2010 census, the resident U.S. population is 308,745,538 persons. I think we should move in just a bit. This 2010 census population represents a growth of 9.7% over the official population count of 2000. Now I turn to the implication of the 2010 official census results on the membership of the U.S. House of Representatives. As you know, the constitutional purpose of the census is the redistribution of the membership of the House of Representatives across states, proportional to the population. The effect of the official 2010 population counts at the state level on congressional apportionment is a shift of 12 seats affecting 18 different states. Those states gaining seats include Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Nevada, South Carolina, Texas, Utah, and Washington, as you see on the graphic. Those losing states are Illinois, Iowa, Louisiana, Massachusetts, Michigan, Missouri, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. For 32 states, there is no change. Texas gained the most seats this decade, a total of 4, and indeed, that state has gained seats for 7 consecutive decades. The next graphic shows a national snapshot of the 2010 census apportionment of the U.S. House of Representatives. California will have 53 seats. Texas will have 36. New York and Florida will each have 27. 7 states will have only 1 representative. The average population size of each House district will be 710,767 persons. This is up from 646,952 at this time in 2000. Over the last 100 years, the rate of growth of the US population has gradually slowed. This is true in many developed societies. But there's a lot of variation across the decades, as you can see from the red line on this graphic. There are 2 notable decades here. Between 1930 and 1940, the small growth rate of 7.3% is thought to be related to the Great Depression of the 1930s. Between 1950 and 1960, the high growth rate of 18.5% reflects the so-called baby boom. The percentage growth this last decade, as I stated earlier, 9.7%, is thus the second lowest of the past century.
So we have a question from Twitter. This one from Utah, Dr. Groves. When and where do we get county data?
Starting in February, state by state, the Census Bureau will release data that will be used by the states for redistricting.
I'd like to know the actual budget from Congress for the 2010 census. What's the actual dollar amount?
Well, Secretary Locke referred to the 2010 fiscal year budget, which was about $7.4 billion. Of that $7.4 billion was spent on census operations, data collection operations, and the beginning of the processing activities. And as he noted, of that $7.4 billion, we were able to return $1.87 billion. We saved enough money to return that to the Treasury.
In New Mexico, not a lot of people answered the questionnaire. It was the lowest responding rate. What did the census do to make sure that the accurate count, that New Mexico has the accurate count?
There are 2 things, and actually this is a great question because it allows me to go over how we do a census. We do indeed mail out or deliver questionnaires, but that's the beginning of a process. You can think of that as sort of the first half of a census. Any household that did not return the questionnaire we sent them was followed up in what we called a non-response follow-up step. That amounted to about 47 million households. We knocked on those doors repeatedly. We visited as many as 6 times throughout that process. So the relationship between the mail return rate and the complete count is really quite a fuzzy one because we follow up on every household. At the end of this process, for every household on our master address file, we have a resolution. We have a population estimate, or we have a population count through all of our processing and data collection. So the census, as much as we can know from our operations, is complete in all those areas.
Our next question from Karina on Twitter. What is the difference between these results today and the recent ACS, American Community Survey results?
There are multiple estimates. This refers to a huge release of small area estimates that we provided just a few days ago. There are several differences. They reflect the period 2005 through 2009. The counts I just released are April 1, 2010 counts. There's a time difference between the two. The second thing is, one of the benefits of the short form census was all of us didn't have a lot of work to do. It took just minutes to fill this out. The bad thing about that is there aren't many pieces of information in the decennial census. The American Community Survey, on the other hand, is rich in characteristic data, socioeconomic data, housing data, travel patterns of travel to work, and so on. And so using those in combination is a wonderful way to understand this country. And that's how we use them at the Census Bureau. Apportionment is the big thing that we talked about today, but this really begins a process that goes on for years. These population counts are used in a lot of public laws within urban areas, and DC is a beneficiary of that this decade, clearly.
Shoot you an email.